Sony doesn't really need you to buy the Xperia 1 Mark V if you don't want it. I know that's maybe a controversial thing to say. It's not for everybody. There are people who seem to be concerned about Sony and the way that they make phones, trying to stay profitable, the fact that they don't really compete on the global stage with anyone, and I don't think that they actually care all that much. So I was watching a video earlier from MKBHD talking about what Sony can do, and kind of related it back to Porsche and how they were operating back in the 80s, making these super high-level cars, but weren't really making any money. So they started, I guess, whenever later on, making some SUVs, and it turned out to be really, really good selling car, which, I mean, that's fine and all dandy. Well, he likened that trying to say that Sony needs to make a more pedestrian level phone for a lot of folks to be successful and to like get more phones out there, I guess. I don't know. But my thought process behind this is they don't need that. They don't need that at all. Why? Because, well, one, they sell the PlayStation 5, which made them a horribly big mountain of money this last year. So their fiscal year ended in March, and at the end of their fiscal year, they made, I think it was like $8.9 billion profit for the year. So I think Sony is pretty happy with their design that they have so far. Sony wants to make super high-end level stuff, but also Sony actually turned a profit last year because they peddle out their camera lenses to other companies, and just the fact alone that Apple updated their phones and they got this new Sony sensor actually increased their profit by, it was like 5 or 7% overall last year. Like, they made a lot of money that way too. So Sony is not really kind of like Volkswagen. Sony is like, look, we want to make ultra premium smartphones, and we're cool with that. So I think they're pretty happy with the fact that they're selling these to and creating something. It's not like, okay, we're just making a pedestrian level phone. And of course they have the 10 series, and I really want to get my hands on the 10.5. Sony was like, well, I talked to Sony US. They're the ones that sent me this. And they're like, well, we don't market it over here, so we don't have any review units. So I don't know if I'll get my hands on one of those. But my experience with the Xperia 1 Mark V, I think it's a great phone. I think it's a fantastic phone that offers a lot. If this is what you want, I don't go around recommending this phone to a lot of people, because this is not the most consumer-friendly phone. It's a very kind of a niche upper-level device that has some quirks and nuances, and even stuff that I'm still trying to tap into. As somebody who is a self-proclaimed expert and uses this phone as a daily driver and has used Sony phones, Xperia Mark V, Mark IV, Mark III, there's a lot to it. It's not the most friendly when it comes to point and shoot. There, as MKBHD pointed out, there's 3 different camera apps. There's one for the camera, then there's the studio. It's Cinema Pro, Video Pro. They've got Music Pro. They've got all sorts of stuff on here. So there's a lot to it. There's really a whole lot to unpack. And if you do, and if you're interested in that, and you want to have some of these cool camera capabilities and stuff, then go for it. But I don't think Sony's really interested in this point at making a phone that sells like hotcakes. Like, they're not trying to flood the market like iPhone. They're not trying to flood the market with lower level Samsung phones like Samsung does. They're just trying to operate in their space. They pull back to a safe distance, I think, for them. And they just make an ultra premium phone that has all these great enthusiast stuff for cameras. Sony likes cameras. And it's funny because Sony also has a camera division. Sony has PlayStation, they've got Sony Entertainment, they've got the cameras, they've got high-end TVs. You don't see Sony making $300 and $400 TVs. So I don't really expect they're going to make $400 or $500 phones that they sell that have like a 1080p screen and all that stuff, like it was suggested in the video. Not trying to ding MKBHD at all. We just have differing opinions on this. But I'm like, they don't really need to. Sony has all this infrastructure background. They're probably sitting on a bunch of cash. I mean, they've been like the name brand of electronics since the 70s and the 80s. I mean, if you wanted premium in the 80s and the 90s, like, you wouldn't got Sony. That was it. So I don't think they're quite at that level of prestige anymore, but they make some pretty amazing stuff. I love Sony stuff. I bought their TVs. I buy their phones. This one I didn't buy. I've already pre-ordered mine because I have to send this one back like tomorrow, which is unfortunate, but I'll have it back soon enough once mine finally gets here in July. But he did make one thing that I wanted to talk about. MKBHD said that they need to get their phones into people's hands faster, and I 100% agree. So apparently it used to take like 5-6 months to get from announcement to getting them in people's hands in the US. They're a Japanese company. They have their Asian market phones. They come out first, then Europe, then the United States. So this go around, it's about 3 months, which is a really long time, like agonizingly long. It was announced like May 10th, May 11th. We can't get it in the States till July 28th. That's almost 3 months. That's a really long time. I mean, I've criticized Google for the same thing with the Pixel. With the Pixel Fold, they announced it on May 10th. We're not getting it until June 28th, early July, whatever time frame is for your pre-order. That's a long time. If you look at Apple, if you look at Samsung, they have their announcement, and then within like 2 weeks, you have it, and you can go pick it up in the store. You can go ahead and get it, the one you pre-ordered, whatever. So I think it could help Sony because it really leaves a long gulf there. And I've been lucky enough that Sony gave me this one to use for the amount of time that I have since it's come out. I've been able to make a lot of content for people who are interested. I really enjoy the phone, but otherwise, there's not really any folks with these phones able to make content about them. So people are interested, but they can only pre-order them and sit around and wait and like, oh, let me look at this stuff and wait for my phone to show up, right? But anyway, I just wanted to have some like food for thought discussion about this because Sony, they're doing all right. I mean, there's a global turn down for chip demand this year, so Sony is projecting a little bit less money this year. They're doing pretty good. And when we're talking about billions of dollars in operating profit, like that's after all of their expenses. This isn't like, oh, they're threading the needle, barely have like a couple dollars left for the name. We're talking like close to $10 billion based off of what I was reading for their fiscal year operating profit. So yeah, I think that they're pretty happy making these high level, very notable premium content creators, niche devices. And I think they like that because they were making phones before and they were trying to compete and it just wasn't happening all that well. And for the people who want the phones, they get them. Now, I granted, it's a very niche subset. Like, I don't want a DSLR camera, but I want a phone with DSLR-like qualities. There's not a whole lot of people that are interested in that. But of course, we've got the Pro I, probably the Pro i2, whatever they're going to call it's going to come out probably in a couple of months. I think they're on to something here. And I was talking to somebody else. We think that collectively Samsung owes a lot of people an apology for the chips they made last year, the Snapdragon 8 Generation 1s they helped make. That was not a good chip. And it messed up the Sony Xperia 1 Mark IV's reputation. It messed up the OnePlus 10's reputation. It messed up the S22 Ultra's reputation. The Snapdragon 8 Generation 2 and everybody doubling down with that, being made by TSMC this year. This phone is fantastic. The heat problems, I mean, they're gone. It's a really enjoyable experience. I love the 6.5-inch screen. I love the 4K display resolution. Beautiful display. I love the dedicated shutter button. There's so much that I like about this phone. I like the prices come down some too. It's $200 cheaper than last year. So I think there's a lot to like here. But again, I don't recommend this phone to a lot of people because it's a little bit more complicated than what most folks are probably looking to get themselves into. And it's an expensive phone. There's a lot of other options out there. I definitely value, as I've said many times before. So just some food for thought and some discussion. I heard that and I was like, I mean, I get the point, but it's not really comparing apples to oranges, pun intended with Apple being in the phone space. Sony makes a ton of money elsewhere that allows them to do this with it basically without impunity because it's not really affecting their bottom line. And I think that's why they enjoy doing it. They like to make this cool, like creator, content creation, camera focused, really cool phone. And I think they're happy with that. So if you don't want it, I mean, get the 10.5. You can save some money there and get the like lesser device, which definitely appeals to a lot of folks because lower introductory price and you still get a lot of the same stuff. So that's all I got in this video. Let me know what your thoughts are. Let me know what you think in the comment section. We'll go there and talk about it. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like and the subscribe button and the little notification bell if you want updates when new videos come out. And as always, thanks for being here. I appreciate you watching and I'll see you guys next time.